Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure, all Bookmap Limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure. Trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and to the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @Pless. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. That certainly applies to large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the S futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with the S futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as the directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow on Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's my agenda for today, Wednesday, November 5th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events, and earnings for yesterday, today, as well as the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started with economic data, events, and earnings. So first of all, the ADP employment or payroll data came out this morning. That is private payroll data, 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time. And that was greater than expected, greater than previous. And let's take a look at the live market while we're talking about this. So back to ES. And then at 10 a.m., the ISM Services PMI data came out, and that was greater than expected, greater than previous, also greater than the previous number, and greater than 50, so indicating expansion. All right, so that does today. Yesterday, AMD did report earnings after the close. We'll take a look at AMD in a couple of minutes. All right, then coming up this week, Tomorrow, Tesla shareholder meeting, and the big event at the meeting is voting on Elon Musk $1 trillion pay package. And then this afternoon, Robinhood and Qualcomm report earnings. We'll take a look at Robinhood. And then on Friday, normally the jobs report would come out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, but the U.S. government remains closed, record government closing. And then 10 a.m., Michigan consumer sentiment does come out. Again, that's 10 a.m. on Friday. All right, so we'll take a look at, again, Robinhood and AMD. AMD reported yesterday. Robinhood reports today. All right, so that's the news. Let's move on to positional analysis now. And this is the S&P 500. This is ES Futures and Bookmap. I know there's a lot of lines on this chart. I focus on key ES levels. So you can see ES has moved from the lower daily expected move before the cash open. That was overnight, up to the upper daily expected move today. So those are the key ES levels, 6,800 in between. And then also have SPY and SPX levels on this chart. So let's step back. Let's take a look at our higher time frame, and we can isolate some of these SPX and SPY levels. So I'm going to start with the SPX, the underlying index, and take a look at a one-day chart to get a sense of what has been happening in the market the last few months. So the rally that began early in April is still intact. Looking at more recent price action, this is the Friday, October 10th tariff tantrum. And then the market recovered after that, made a high right around 69.20 and pulled back, and looks like it's trying to recover again. All right, so let's take a look now at a little bit shorter time frame. Let's go to a 30-day 1-hour chart so we can isolate the most recent price action and take a look at some of the levels for SPX. So this is a 30-day 1-hour chart. Here's the Friday, October 10th tariff tantrum, and then a rally after that, and then resistance in this band right here, right around 67.50 to 67.60. And then on Friday, October 24th, CPI data did come out and was better than expected, and SPX gapped up that day, rallied up again to 69.20, and then pulled back starting last Wednesday, found support at this key resistance level that was, again, that 67.50 to 60 level that was resistance before, now acting as support. All right, so that is the most recent price action. Let's take a look at some of the levels on this chart. I'm going to start with the expected moves. The dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. This is based on the options market. Based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday, those levels remain in place for the entire week. The dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, and that's based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. I do post the expected moves for SPX, ES, and NQ every day the day before. Again, that's for SPX, ES, NQ, in the Options-Doug chat channel and Bookmap Discord. All right, so you can see SPX trading just above its upper daily expected move for today. All right, let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels on this chart. These are the dark red lines. They're based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers on a variety of trading platforms. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, 6,000, the absolute gamma strike, has moved down now from 7,000 yesterday down to 6,000 today. So big drop in the absolute gamma strike. That's the strike with largest absolute positive and negative gamma. Of course, 6,000 well out of play. Next level up is the put wall at 6,700. Let me zoom in on this. We'll zoom in here. All right, so again, 6,000 absolute gamma strike, down below at 6,000. Put wall at 6,700. That's a strike with large net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. And that level did move up from yesterday. It was 6,500 yesterday. So the put wall moved up to 6,700. Next level up is the volatility trigger at 67.95. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. Note that is based on Spotgamma's older total open interest model. And we'll take a look at gamma in just a couple of minutes, a view of gamma based on their newer synthetic open interest model. That level did move down from yesterday, about 50 points down from yesterday. So the put wall moved up, volatility trigger, and the absolute gamma strike moved lower. Then finally, the call wall remains at 7,000. That's a strike with large net positive gamma, and that can be expected to act as resistance. So that is more of the long-term potential target, perhaps into year-end if the rally resumes. All right, that is the SPX current view. And let's wrap up our view of SPX with a little bit shorter time frame. We'll go to a 1-minute chart. So this is showing the support of that resistance support zone that I mentioned before. And note, since touching that level this morning in the first few minutes, SPX has rallied today. Some consolidation around the 67.95 volatility trigger, and now SPX trading up above its upper daily expected move. All right, let's take a look at SPY. There's a couple of important SPY levels that were in play earlier today. So here's the other underlying index. This is SPY. Note this key support this morning, and this was actually yesterday evening. Support at the 670 absolute gamma strike put wall. So that was overnight support. And then earlier today, SPY traded down below and now up above its volatility trigger at 675 and now trading up to 680. That's a large gamma 2 level. And finding support at the 0 gamma level and then the 680 level along the way up. All right, back to Bookmap. So again, now we have focused on the SPX levels, SPY levels, and again, I know that's a lot of levels on this chart. So there's the SPY 670 absolute gamma strike put wall, overnight support, break above the ES lower daily expected move, resistance before the cash open at the SPY 675 volatility trigger, then a break above that, just before 10 a.m. And then here's the SPX 67.95 volatility trigger, and just above that the 6,800 level that was noted as noted as resistance in the Spotgamma AM Founders Note. Hello, Amir. Welcome. Glad you're here. All right, so those are the levels. Then here's the ES upper daily expected move. Note again, I do calculate that separately or independently from the SPX upper daily expected move. So we saw SPX is trading above its upper daily expected move, but ES seems to be stalling at that level. All right, so we'll talk about setups in just a couple of minutes. And note there's a difference in price between ES and SPX. And today that ES to SPX offset is somewhere between 27 and 28. Looks like it may be a little bit closer to 28 now. I'm using 27. So I'm showing SPX 6800 at ES 6827. And I do post those index relationships every day in the Options Dash chat channel on Bookmap Discord. All right, so again, a lot of levels on the chart, key levels in play for SPY and SPX. And we'll take a look at setups in just a couple of minutes. All right, let's move on. And also for SPY, the volatility trigger also shifted lower. Absolute gamma strike also shifted lower, but the call wall shifted higher. So just like SPX for SPY, 2 levels down, 1 level up. All right, let's take a look at NASDAQ. This is the NQ Futures of Bookmap, and I've highlighted a couple of key levels here, acting as support. So let's take a look at those. Note NQ trading up above its upper daily expected move, that dashed blue line. So let's take a look at the underlying index chart so we can isolate some of the mini levels on this chart. We'll start with QQQ. All right, QQQ. Actually, let me zoom in on this just a bit. Overnight support right around 612. And then today, trading up above the volatility trigger at 621. And now up above this 625 large gamma 4 level, making a nice series of higher lows, higher highs. And that's QQQ. Let's take a look at an NDX, the other underlying index component. Note the key support here, right at the 0 gamma level, 25,371, and a break above this 25,500 large gamma 3 level, and then a back test support of that level, and now NDX trading up above its 25,520 volatility trigger. And note that is the highest of the NDX levels. So all levels are down below. The put wall, call wall, all other combo levels, all down below the 520 level. All right, that's NDX. Again, key support at the 0 gamma level. So let's go back to Bookmap now. Take a look at the NQ futures. So the NDX levels that I mentioned, overnight test of the 25,371 0 gamma level, and then after the open, a test of that 25,500 large gamma 3 level. NQ trading up above its upper daily expected move. So it looks like it's done a little bit better job of moving up above that level than ES. We'll check ES again in just a couple of minutes. All right, shifts and levels for NASDAQ. And just like the SPX and SPY, Volatility triggers shifted lower for NDX and QQQ. And for QQQ, the put wall shifted lower, call wall shifted higher. And for NDX, the call wall shifted lower. All right, nice rally in the indexes. We'll take a look at setups in just a couple minutes. Let's wrap up our position analysis by taking a look at Gamma. I'm going to go to the Trace tool. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers. Again, this is the Gamma heat map for SPX. Red shading is showing negative Gamma, and blue shading is showing positive Gamma. Remember, in negative Gamma, we're looking for higher volatility with market makers trading with price. And in the blue shading, positive Gamma, we're looking for slower price action, not so much trending, more mean reverting as market makers trade against price. So it looks like for most of the day, SPX has been trading in mildly negative Gamma, and now it looks like really somewhat neutral Gamma here with negative Gamma up above. And what this looks like if SPX can make it up above these positive GEX bars, Gamma exposure bars, up into this negative Gamma, it could move more quickly. And this is showing the hero signal, hedging impact real-time options. So this is showing that options traders are potentially facilitating a move higher as they take positive delta positions. They're buying calls and or selling puts. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures primarily, and the index moves higher if it can make it through this zone of positive Gamma. All right, let's start with the S&P 500. Let's take a look at some setups now. And again, starting with the S&P 500, as always, I'm going to start by taking a look at what options traders have been doing today. This is the hero signal, hedging impact real-time options. It's showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. We've already talked about a couple of those, SPX and SPY. There are a couple more here, ES and XSP. Again, the white line is price. The purple line is a hero signal. A rising hero signal indicates traders are taking positive delta options positions. They're buying calls and or selling puts. And a falling hero signal indicates traders are taking negative delta options positions. They are buying puts and or selling calls. And just as an example, when traders take positive delta positions, when they buy calls and sell puts, market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they buy ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. All right, so of course this is moving higher. Decent size. That is 7.53 billion notional positive. And that is very good, very large for this time of day. This is showing some consolidation around the 67.95. It's shown as the hedge wall here, but it's the volatility trigger for an index. Some consolidation, and then starting just after 11:15, it looks like options traders started more aggressively. Let's see what they were doing. Started aggressively buying calls. That's shown by the rising orange line. I'm going to have to jump back to avoid the auto zoom. So starting right around just after 11:15, traders started aggressively buying calls, again shown by the rising orange line, and SPX broke above the 67.95 volatility trigger and continues to grind higher. So again, the orange line shows calls, blue line shows puts. Direction of the lines indicates options delta. All right, so that is the index signal, and this is really set up along right around 9:45. Quick move up to the volatility trigger. Looks like about an hour and a half of consolidation. And then call buyers came in. Traders started selling puts again. And the index moves higher. Let's take a look at the other signal available for the S&P 500. And this is the S&P 500 equity signal. And a little bit out of sync this morning. I thought the index signal provided much more clarity this morning about the price action. This is showing initially traders were selling calls, and we'll take a look at some of the stocks, major stocks in this index to see what was potentially driving that. And then the call buyers stepped in right after 10:15. And they continue to buy calls in a pretty mechanical fashion there, starting just after 10:15, maybe 10:20. So net for the day, they are still put buyers, but they are also call buyers, which is driving price this afternoon. All right, let's go to Bookmap. Go back to the index. Much more clarity there. Go to Bookmap. Let's zoom in on this. So options trades, of course, for SPX and ES, they actually trade before the cash open. But most options start trading at 9:30, so we'll focus on that. Cash open, 9:30. This is the 675 volatility trigger. Volume dots in Bookmap show market buy minus sell. Magenta dots indicate more sellers than buyers. Green volume dots indicate more buyers than sellers. You could see the aggressive buyers started to come in a few minutes after 9:30. And remember 9:40, that 9:45, that's when the index hero signal started to move higher. Pullbacks along the way. And now ES still consolidating around its upper daily expected move, trying to break out above that level. Let's take a look at the subchart here. So the pink or magenta to dark blue line, that's Kilmageal volume delta. You can see that it's starting to rise just after 9:30. Yellow line shows stop orders, and a rising yellow line indicates buy stop orders have been fueling that move higher. And note they flatten out just after 12:30. And now the light blue line is showing iceberg orders. So it looks like initially there were some buyers there, large traders buying with iceberg orders. Then it looks like one big order came in, and that was absorbed by buyers, shown by the large green volume dots there. And price pulled back, but continued to move higher. All right, so that's the S&P 500. From the cash open, rally up to about, from the SPY 675 level. So about a 50-point rally or so, depending on where you got in and if you got out in the ES. And again, stalling at the upper daily expected move. All right, so that's the S&P 500. Looks like quite a bit of that driven by call buyers in the index components. Let's go back to Hero. I'm going to shift back to the total signal, and let's take a look, and I'm going to have to jump to avoid the auto zoom, jump back. All right, let's take a look and see check the expiration of these trades. So I'm looking at all trades now. This is all expirations. Today, tomorrow, the end of the week, end of the month, next month. All right, so let's take a look at next expiry, which for the S&P 500 would be 0 DTE, options that expire at the end of the day today. And what this is showing is a pretty large portion of this, the teal line, pretty large portion of the options trades today are 0 DTE, options that expire at the end of the day. And this is very typical in the S&P 500, 0 DTE options traders driving price every day. All right, I'm going to turn that off. All right, so that's the S&P 500. All right, let me check for questions. All right. Gianni Peroni, welcome. Glad you're here. Asked, which software do you use to identify if options are bought or sold? And I use, this is Spotgamma Hero. So it's Spotgamma. It's a service they provide, many tools. This is just one of them. It's Hero. HIRO, Hedging Impact Real-Time Options. And again, the directional lines indicates options delta. So we'll shift back to puts and calls. Orange line shows calls. Blue line shows puts. So this shows traders are buying calls and selling puts. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they hedge their delta exposure by buying ES futures. All right, back to total. Let's take a look at NASDAQ now. And TK asks, welcome, glad you're here. Asks, can you explain how you can identify what signified a move up at 9:36 a.m. on NQ today? And I assume you mean Eastern time. So this is the NASDAQ hero signal. So we'll start by taking a look at that. And this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the NASDAQ index components. We've taken a look at those. That's QQQ and NDX. So you can see this turnaround. This was right around 9:45. Options traders started taking positive delta positions. Market makers take the opposite side of the trades, and they have to buy NQ futures to hedge their delta exposure. All right, so let's go to Bookmap, go to NQ. So let's zoom in on this just a little bit here. All right, TK is asking about 9:36, so it looks like that is this reversal right here. All right, so let's walk through this. First of all, here's a level that I expect may act as support, actually a cluster of levels there. Lower weekly expected move just below that, and then VWAP. And as it turns out, it was the 371.0 gamma level for NDX, acting as support. And Bookmap, I see some aggressive buyers coming in, shown by the green volume dots. Let me bump up the volume dots a little bit. It's a little bit too much. Sorry about that. All right, we'll leave it at that. Aggressive buyers start to come in. Pull back to the QQQ 618 level. And for me, that would be my first entry point. Move higher, pull back. Buy stop orders help to fuel that move higher. Note initially, actually let me get this out of the way. Looking at the iceberg orders here, sell iceberg orders immediately met by buy iceberg orders. So we know right here, NQ making a higher low, buy stop orders, and also buy iceberg orders helping to fuel that move higher. And back to Hero. Let's zoom in on this just a bit. So here's that initial pullback, 936, 937. Then the pullback just a few minutes before 945. Note the sharp reversal in the Hero signal. So we know traders are buying calls and selling puts. And price moves higher. All right, so TK, I hope that answers your question. All right, let's take a look at the other index signal, the other signal available for the NASDAQ. That's a Mag 7. I'm going to shift puts and calls. And that does provide some clarity here. That looked like a block order, large institution selling calls. And price reverse lower. TK, you're welcome. All right, Mag 7, a little bit out of sync until 10:15, just like the S&P 500 equities, which is really the Mag 7 plus 493. All right, back to NASDAQ. Again, block order, selling calls, and then smaller. A lot of small orders immediately reversing that. Traders buying calls, selling puts, and NASDAQ moves higher. All right, any more questions about the indexes? If not, I'm going to move on to some stocks. All right, the first stock I want to take a look at today is Google. So I've got a list of about 7 stocks I want to take a look at. If anyone else has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know. I'll be glad to do that. So I want to start with Google. And this is a very nice bullish opening drive this morning. And a bullish opening drive, a little bit delayed, as most stocks were this morning, just a few minutes. And after the, I guess, the big drop yesterday, it took traders just a few minutes to get their footing and get going. But this bullish opening drive started just before 9:40. Traders started aggressively buying calls. Flow alert signals significant options activity. Get your attention. Traders continue to buy calls shown by the rising orange line. Nice pullback entry right here, right around 942, 943. Looks like some block orders in there, large traders buying calls. Then right around 10:15, the call buyers took their foot off the gas and Google consolidated and has pretty much been trading in a narrow range since then. So this is a very typical pattern. Bullish opening drive lasts maybe 30, 45 minutes, up to an hour. And then the call buyers take the foot off the gas and price either consolidates or reverses. And here the case was consolidation. All right, so let's take a look at Bookmap, Google. Nice long setup in the morning. Let's zoom in on this. So here's this pullback, actually two entries. If you were really focused on Google this morning, number one entry, trend break, aggressive buyers, rising cumulative volume delta, call buyers coming in, alert. And then if you waited for a pullback, here you go, pullback right around the point of control, the opening print. Also VWAP shown by the light blue line. And then that's good for about a 6-point move higher in Google, up almost to the 285 level. Note the higher liquidity of that level. Those are limit sell orders. So bullish opening drive in Google. Next stock, well, it looks like some news may have come in for Google. That sharp jump higher. Let's see if that is just Google or the market. Next stock I want to take a look at is NVIDIA. And that may just have been news about Google. All right, NVIDIA, also bullish this morning. Note the opening move lasted for about 90 minutes from 9:30 to 11, up to the liquidity at 203 and absorption at that level. Those orders were not consumed, but acted as a magnet for price. So let's see what options traders are doing in NVIDIA. All right, NVIDIA, again, it took a few minutes for the traders to get their footing. They started buying calls just before 9:45, also selling puts. That didn't last long. The call buyers kept up. So NVIDIA found support at the 197.50 put wall, broke above the 200 key gamma strike after some consolidation around that level, and then continued up until about 11 a.m. when the call buyers took their foot off the gas. All right, so keys here, 195, 197.50. Put wall support, consolidation of the 200 key gamma strike, and then foot off the gas 11 a.m. and NVIDIA consolidating. All right, let's take a look at Bookmap. Let's go to NVIDIA. And there it is. I don't have the, looks like NVIDIA broke down a little bit below the 197.50 put wall. But that didn't last long, just maybe a minute. Broke above that level. Here's the consolidation of the 200 key gamma strike. And then a move higher until 11 a.m. Absorption at the 203 level. Note these orders, limit sell orders, were consumed at 203 not. There were several good entry points on this move higher. Pull back to VWAP just after the open, then a breakout of the consolidation. Another pullback with targets at 202, 203. All right, so that's NVIDIA, bullish day. Let's take a look at Tesla. Tesla had a bearish morning. It looks like it is recovering now. Very nice recovery in Tesla. Looks like this may be New all-time highs in Tesla. Very nice recovery. So let's see what options traders have been doing in Tesla. Let's zoom in on this. So here's the bearish opening drive. Traders selling calls, buying puts. Full alert comes in, signal significant options activity, get your attention. When traders sell calls and buy puts, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure by selling stock. Dimitar, I believe it was. Yes, you can ask questions here. And I have seen, I have not taken a look at your direct message yet. I just haven't had time this morning, but I will after this webinar. But yeah, you can ask questions here. All right, so Tesla broke down below its 450 key gamma strike. Didn't spend much time there and headed toward the 440 hedge wall. All right, so brief bearish opening drive. Dip buyers came in. Stopped selling calls. Started buying calls. Started selling puts. And Tesla moved higher. Looks like now the call buyers have taken their foot off the gas. And Tesla moving a little bit lower. So very nice turnaround in Tesla. Let's go back to Bookmap. So you can see from the open, cumulative volume delta pretty much moving higher. So there were traders buying shares of Tesla, shown by the rising cumulative volume delta, even though traders were selling calls and buying puts. So very nice breakout. Bit of a trim break there. Pull back to VWAP. Nice, safe, long entry as traders are buying calls, selling puts. Aggressive traders buying Tesla. Key targets at 455. Limit sell orders acting as a magnet for price. 460. 465, and looks like traders took their foot off the gas before the 460 level as some sellers came in. A 465 level, sorry. All right, so that's Tesla, very nice recovery. Next stock I want to take a look at is AMD. Again, remember, AMD reported earnings after the close yesterday. Looks like it is moving higher today. Nice bullish day in AMD. We'll see what options traders have been doing. So a little bit of a choppy start, just like many other stocks, but around 940, 950. Call buyers came in, shown by the rising orange line. Then right around 1045 started more aggressively buying calls. So net for the day in AMD, again, AMD reported earnings after the close yesterday, and traders are responding today by buying calls and selling puts, and AMD moving higher. Josh, welcome, glad you're here. Josh asked, how can I change the color of those bubbles? Just started using Bookmap. Great, glad to hear. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. All right, so there's AMD. Call bars really starting to get more aggressive right around 1045, and AMD continues to move higher. All right, back to Bookmap. AMD right around 10:45, aggressive call buyers come in, and AMD starts to make a series of very nice higher lows, pullback entries. Heading up toward the liquidity targets at 250, 255. Looks like more sellers coming in just above 257, above 258. Those have all been consumed. And next target level up above is 260. Limit sell orders in the order book. All right, let's take a look and see how we can change the volume dots. So I'm going to right click here and go to colors, and here I can change the colors of the buy trade circles and the sell trade circles. So just click on the color swatch there, and you can change it to whatever you want. So I did change the sell volume dots here to magenta. I thought it stood out better compared with the more reddish orange heat map. So I changed my sell volume dots to magenta to stand out on the chart a little bit more carefully. So that's all you have to do. Right click on the dot, pick color settings, and then pick whatever you want. All right, next stock, Palantir. Remember, Palantir reported earnings after the close on Monday. Traded down on Tuesday, and then again this morning traded down as well, but now it looks like it's recovering as many other stocks are recovering. And of course the concern with Palantir and leading to concern about other AI stocks has been the valuation, the price to earnings ratio. And Palantir, I think, may have the if not the highest, one of the highest PE ratios in the S&P 500, but it's also growing pretty substantially. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see what options traders have been doing, and then we'll get back to Bookmap here. Go to Palantir. So this was a bearish opening drive. Traders selling calls from the open. Full alert comes in, signals significant option activity, get your attention. Traders aggressively, mechanically selling calls from the open. That lasted just a little bit less than an hour. Call sellers took the foot off the gas. Traders started buying calls, and we saw the green volume dots in Palantir. Aggressive buyers, stock buyers came in. Traders were selling puts, stopped, took the foot off the gas. Palantir recovering. And this, in the morning here, this set up a very nice divergent short. Traders continue to sell calls. And price eventually dropped, chopped, and reversed lower, setting up this divergent short just after 9:45. But again, it looks like the trade of the day may be long. So far, Palantir has not quite recovered the opening print. Here's this divergent short right around VWAP. Notice all the green volume dots coming in right around 10 a.m. Aggressive buyers as Palantir recovered. Next target up above is the 190 level. Those limit sell orders in the order book. All right, that's Palantir. Looks like trying to recover from the big drop after reporting earnings on on Monday, which was actually a good report, but the concerns about valuation were driving price lower. All right, let's take a look at Robinhood, which reports earnings after the close today. Let's see what options traders are doing. So overall, bullish day in Robinhood here. Rising cumulative volume delta. Traders buying shares of Robinhood ahead of reporting earnings. Let's see what options traders are doing. Pretty choppy today. And these numbers are almost flat. So this is call buyers up and down, or call traders up and down. Net for the day slightly negative. And then they're also buying puts. And it looks like most of that was a couple of block orders here just after the open. Large traders buying puts. So far for today, the options trading in Robinhood is pretty not very interesting. Just up and down chop. But looks like price action being driven by aggressive buyers. A lot of green volume dots, rising cumulative volume delta. All right, last stock I want to take a look at is Micron. Very nice bullish opening drive. So I identified early in the day Google and Micron as two stocks trading higher. I ended up trading Google, but Micron, very nice bullish opening drive, much bigger move than Google. So let's take a look. Let's see what options traders are doing in Micron. Call buyers. Aggressive call buyers from the open. A little bit of chop. Good entry points for long as traders continue to buy calls, sell puts. And then the put sellers and call buyers took the foot off the gas right around 11 a.m. and Micron consolidating. Right back to Bookmap. Very nice bullish opening drive. Pullback entries, remember those little choppy areas we saw on the hero signal. Pullback entries. So Micron trading up over 10 points today. All right, let's take a look at the indexes. I've got a couple of minutes left. Dimitar, I believe, Rospan asked, could you please give me an example how options traders do the hedging with futures? So it's actually market makers that do the hedging with futures. So traders buy and sell puts and calls. Let's take a look at ES. Traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, the underlying index components. And the best way for market makers to hedge their delta exposure with the S&P 500 is with the ES futures. So the SPX, it's an index. It's an options only index. So you can't buy or sell SPX. So of course the only way to really effectively hedge SPX is with ES futures. So remember the SPX is equivalent to 2 ES futures. And then SPX 10 SPY or 10 SPY contracts, 100 shares times 10. So 10,000 shares of a SPY is equivalent to SPX. or SPX is 10 times the size of SPY. All right, so let's just now take a look, go back to Hero, and I'm going to go to the total signal, go to SP 500. So this shows right here 11:15. Traders buying calls. Remember, we show that buying calls. And the underlying index components. That's SPX, SPY, ES, and XSP, which is 1/10 the size of SPX, just like SPY, but not nearly as liquid. So traders buy calls, market makers sell the calls, and they have to buy futures to hedge their delta exposure. And we can take a look and see if that was in SPX or SPY. It was in both. So traders buying and selling puts buying calls in SPX and SPY. Market makers sell the calls. They have to buy ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. And notice this is flattened out since about 12:40, 12:35, 12:40. Back to Bookmap. So ES is still consolidating. Stock just below its upper daily expected move. Let's check NASDAQ. All right, NASDAQ has slowed down, but it is trading up above its upper daily expected move. All right, last call for questions, comments. All right, we took a look at the indexes, and we saw how options traders were driving both ES and NQ higher. We took a look at stocks, some bullish setups, bullish opening drives, bearish opening drives, and recovery. And it looks like now many stocks are moving higher. And again, remember, Robinhood, Qualcomm, we looked at Robinhood today. We'll report earnings after the close. Tesla shareholder meeting tomorrow. And then 10 a.m. Friday, Michigan consumer sentiment. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you next Monday. Thanks for watching. Bye.